Labor is such a critical aspect of running a profitable and healthy taproom. If you have too much labor, you're probably running real inefficient and leaving money on the table. However, if your labor is too low, you're probably overworking your people and stressing them out, creating a very unhealthy environment to work in. But taprooms have a hard time sometimes getting to the labor insights they need to really take those pinpointed and targeted actions in order to move the needle the right direction. What I want to show you is how getting a lot of this data into an interactive environment like this really helps those insights stand out. Okay, let's dive in. You can see on this front page, what we're doing is we're bringing in information from your labor system and your point of sale system. And what we're able to do is show an overall labor cost percent. I think everybody's pretty familiar with this metric, right? We're showing you how that's trended over time. You can see that over here. We're comparing it to your recent run rate and then the same week last year. But then what we're doing is starting to take this a level deeper because sometimes it's hard to actually action the labor cost. So what we're doing is we're breaking it down into more of a productivity metric, an average wage, and an average check. And then depending on what you're seeing go on with one of those metrics, it might help steer your actions you're going to take in the right direction. Another thing we can do now that we have this in an interactive environment is we can start to change some of the visualizations. You'll see I just clicked on the year over year graph and now we're getting a different view of our trend line, right? And I think this helps maybe stand out some new insights that you might have missed otherwise. And what we're basically doing is we're comparing this year in the dark line compared to last year in the gray line. We're able to pick up some seasonality this way. We're able to see how different things trended. And some examples of that are, in this case, our productivity measurement. You can see the darker line has been consistently under where we were last year, showing that we're less productive than we were last year. You can see average wage has recently jumped up quite a bit year over year. And then finally, on the good side, we can see our average check for the whole year has basically been over where we were last year. And all of that taken together is what's giving us right now 32% labor cost. So now let's say this is great information, right? But you can't always make decisions based on it at still what's kind of a high level. So what you need to do is dive in a little bit deeper. Let's do that. So we just clicked on the overtime button and now we're diving more into where we're spending money on overtime. So you can see over the last 90 days what our overall overtime cost was, what the percent was, how many employees we have, and how many hours of overtime we're working. And now you'll see we're just breaking that down a lot of different ways. We're showing it for the last basically 13 weeks or last 90 days. Gray is going to be normal hours we worked, and red is going to be overtime. So we can see how we're trending on both. And in this case, we had some spikes in overtime a few different weeks. We're breaking that down a little bit deeper, even down here, where we're showing it now by day of the week. So we can really find for any given week what day of the week might have driven that, or is it consistent over time? Now we're going to break it down further by front of house and back of house, which you can see here. We're going to break it down by position and then by individual person. So now let's dive in a little bit more. Let's say they were concerned about their front of house labor. All we have to do is click there and you're going to see everything else filters accordingly. So in this case, we can see for front of house, servers have been working the most overtime hours at 185. But maybe bartenders what we want to focus on because they have 10% overtime. I just clicked again, and now we can see which specific people are driving bartender overtime hours and what different days and weeks we're driving that. So we can really start to dial in and see where we're spending our overtime and if it makes sense. Okay, let's look at a little bit deeper level of productivity. So we just clicked on this new dashboard. Now what we're doing when we're looking at productivity, this is your total number of orders that you sold compared to the total number of hours you're working. We're going to show that in total up here. Oops, sorry. As you can see, as I hover over it, we can also see some trending information. Then we're going to break it down deeper into back of house productivity. So what we're doing here is we're just measuring your food orders and your back of house hours. So we're starting to get that a little bit more dialed in, right? And then front of house productivity is going to go back to your total number of orders, but just your front of house hours. So now we're able to break kind of our front of house and back of house apart. Next up, we're looking at a heat map. And what this is doing is it's showing each day of the week. And then now we're also looking at, we're breaking your total hours worked into kind of different windows of time or maybe different shifts. Right now, these are each showing a 3 hour window of time. And then when we get that darker blue color, that's when our productivity is high. And then when we have the lighter gray color, that's when it's low. So we're able to really start to see what our average day and time of day look like. Are we usually pretty productive, or do we struggle on this side? And then we're breaking it down by, again, back of house and front of house. And what I think is interesting on this one is we get different patterns when we're looking at front of house versus back of house, right? We can see front of house is actually most productive during the lunch shift. But back of house is not. They pick it up more at the dinner time. So we get some interest as we break it down further to this level, we can pick up some of those insights. And then what's also really interesting is down here at the bottom is we're looking at last week's productivity compared to that average run rate, right? So now we can really get with our team and we can basically say, for example, Friday evening shift was 31% less productive than usual. What happened that day? And we can have a good, meaningful conversation that's really pinpointed to something specific with our team. You can see in this case, as we're again breaking it down by front of house and back of house, we really see that in this case, it was the front of house that also was driving that. So you don't need to necessarily talk to your back of house people about that, right? It's not their responsibility. You're able to make your discussions much more pinpointed with this level of information and take really targeted actions that you're sure are going to move the needle. So I hope that was an interesting look at how bringing all of this information into an interactive dashboard can help you start at a high level of insight and then really be able to dive in to see that and get to those actionable insights that'll really move the needle. If you have any questions on this, please reach out. I love to chat about it. And if you'd like to see your own information in here, it's really easy to load and your team will be off and running. Thanks. Have a great day.